She smiled when he said the man's name. Not the kind of smile you give an old friend, not polite or dismissive. It was too relaxed, too fluid, like her face had rehearsed it. I was pouring myself a coffee, but I caught it. The way her eyes shifted, not with surprise but recognition, like she'd already prepared for the moment. "He's harmless," she said, swiping through something on her phone like it didn't matter. I stirred the cup, watching the ripple spiral out. "Didn't say he wasn't?" She laughed light, like she thought I was being territorial. She touched my arm when she walked past. "You worry too much." His name was Carter. He'd once interned at a firm we both knew, and now apparently he was helping her cousin navigate some legal filings, something vague, conveniently outside my radar. The first real fracture was subtle. She started locking her phone. She'd never done that before. Said she was trying to stay present, and not let work intrude during dinner. I nodded. That's the kind of thing I'd usually advocate. Except the phone would buzz against the granite at 1:47 a.m., and her hand would shoot out fast, screen tilted away. One night she asked me to pick up dinner while she was finishing emails. I forgot my wallet and doubled back. She didn't hear me come in. Her laptop was open. Zoom window minimized too quickly. I saw his face. Briefly. Carter's. She was laughing, head thrown back, hair brushing her collarbone. I stepped out quietly and drove to the restaurant in silence. 2 weeks later, she said she was going on a wellness retreat with her cousin, out of state. No signal. I offered to drive her to the airport. She insisted on a car service. That night, I checked the driveway camera. Habit, not suspicion. Nothing unusual. But a month later, the glitch revealed itself. It was a Tuesday, 2:13 a.m. Wrong driveway. Wrong camera angle. The car pulled in facing the street. Her SUV. Engine running. Carter stepped out from the passenger side. Adjusted his collar like a man leaving a restaurant. Comfortable, unhurried. He walked across the lawn and disappeared off frame. I paused it, then scrolled back 5 minutes. She never left the vehicle. Never looked toward the house. She just waited until he was gone before reversing. She came upstairs 20 minutes later. "Couldn't sleep," she mumbled, climbing in beside me. "Took a drive." I said nothing. Watched her silhouette settle into the pillow beside me. I stared at the ceiling until morning. I didn't shout. I didn't ask. But I stopped drinking the coffee she made the next day. I changed the camera angles, checked the cloud backups. Quietly. Carefully. It wasn't the betrayal that hit hardest. Not yet. It was the smile she gave when his name first came up. That was the moment I couldn't forget, and wouldn't forgive. A simple betrayal would have been easier to understand. That's what I kept thinking, on the nights when she stayed late at her cousin's, when she brought home takeout like she'd just come from a conference, laughing too easily, kissing my cheek like nothing had changed. If it were just physical, there might have been a version of this I could compartmentalize, resent, move through. But the money told another story. It started with a flagged alert, an automated ping from our joint asset account, an attempted update to our company registry profile, something I'd set up years ago with biometric safeguards. The request came through encrypted, but the server metadata was public, submitted from her tablet. At 10:42 p.m., 2 days after her retreat. The document requested a name change, shifting executive designation from joint to sole control. Her name. Not mine. I stared at the metadata timestamp for a long time, listening to the shower run upstairs. I could hear her humming. The same tune she always used when rinsing her hair. She hadn't just crossed the line. She'd mapped the whole terrain. I checked the security footage from my office. We had separate wings in the house for work. My office was keycard locked, but the logs showed a manual override. She'd let him in. The time matched. Her tablet's signature. His fingerprints on the door she was never supposed to open. This wasn't a hidden romance. It was a transition plan. The next morning, she poured orange juice like nothing was cracked. She scrolled headlines, asked about a board meeting I'd postponed last month. Her robe hung loose around her wrist, where she used to wear the watch I'd gifted her on our 10th anniversary. That watch had vanished a week ago. "Thinking about remodeling the guest room," she said. "Maybe put in a reading nook." I nodded slowly, keeping my eyes on the juice. "Who's staying with us?" She blinked. "No one. Just thought it'd be nice." No one. Not yet, anyway. By noon, I'd pulled the access logs from our shared cloud drive. She hadn't just accessed business files, she'd exported them. Meeting notes, private valuations, investor comms, documents with my notes still visible in the margins, all while texting me snapshots from yoga class, while asking if I'd restocked oat milk. Her cousin, it turned out, wasn't just giving her support. She was consulting with a family lawyer, one I vaguely remembered from a bar association gala, a handshake and forgettable smile. They'd already filed a preliminary inquiry to move a portion of our stock to her name. The claim? She had substantially contributed to operational decisions, and was underdocumented due to informal partnership dynamics. In other words, her word against mine. Unless I could prove otherwise, she hadn't left yet. But she was preparing to land on both feet, and she thought I wouldn't see it coming. She was half right. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of rage or heartbreak. Those were there, circling in low orbit, but what kept me awake was calculation. I needed to know how far this had gone, how deep their hands were in my documents, how much time I had before this stopped being salvageable. So I traced everything. Started with a clean device. No shared IPs, no linked accounts. Isolated her activity through the admin logs. She'd used our internal access to download our Articles of Incorporation, our shareholder agreements, even the NDA templates I'd written line by line. Then I saw it, a second filing, dated 3 weeks earlier. Transfer of ownership, 30% of company stock, executed with a signature I hadn't used in 4 years. Slightly looped R, flattened E. I remembered exactly when I'd stopped signing that way, after a client had mimicked it on a side agreement and nearly cost me a contract. This one was forged, badly. I ran it through a signature matching algorithm I'd licensed during a fraud audit last year. Match probability, 41%. No way a real forensic examiner would greenlight it. The document was notarized, digitally. I dug into the verification. The notary ID was linked to a firm in Sacramento. The firm didn't exist. It was a ghost stamp. She was trying to take the company before the truth ever surfaced. Not just take it, document it as a gradual shift, cloaked in legal language and backdated transfers. And Carter? He wasn't some accidental seduction. He was the architect. A paralegal with just enough proximity to the law to draft plausible filings. A man who could sit across from a notary service and know exactly how to fake the required fields. I scrolled further through her drive, found a PDF sheet annotated. Title: Contingency Separation Plan, Draft 2. She'd labeled Carter as External Strategic Advisor, not lover, not mistake, strategist. It explained everything. Why she kept me close but distracted. Why she never fought. Why she smiled when I brought up his name. Because she'd already decided I wouldn't matter by the time the ink dried. But she made one mistake. She underestimated the man who wrote every line of the bylaws she was trying to weaponize. I didn't yell, didn't confront. Instead, I backed up every file. Sent encrypted copies to 2 legal contacts I trusted more than family. One in Texas. One in Oregon. Neither with any connection to her. Then I created a silent trigger. An alert that would notify me the moment another document was filed under either of our business registrations, and I waited. She still kissed me goodnight, still texted heart emojis when I was in meetings, still cooked her sweet potato curry on Fridays, humming that same quiet tune. She was pretending nothing was wrong, and I was pretending she hadn't already signed her exit plan. It escalated faster than I expected. The trigger alert came in at 4:26 p.m. on a Thursday. I was in a quarterly planning session, laptop open, acting as if I hadn't just watched someone try to rewrite my life from a distance. Another filing. This time, not a name change. Not a share transfer. A full restructuring proposal. Submitted to the state as a resolution draft, citing internal reallocation of founder equity and operational clarity in leadership. She had attached my name to it, as if I had approved it. Dated, co-signed, and notarized. The same forged signature, same fake Sacramento stamp. But this time, she had done it through a registered law office. That's when the full shape of the betrayal came into view. The lawyer who filed the resolution? Formerly my client. I'd helped him through a licensing battle 3 years ago. Trusted him enough to invite him to our holiday party. He'd shaken my hand in my own home. And now he was representing her. Her emails to him were archived in her tablet. She hadn't wiped anything. She was confident, or careless. In one message, she attached scanned images of my signature from old contracts, said, "He doesn't monitor the filings. We just need this clean enough to register. He'll fight, but by then we'll have leverage." Leverage. That word again and again in her language. Not partnership, not resolution. Leverage. They were building a trap, and I was the bait. If I challenged the filing too early, they'd claim I was blocking reorganization. If I waited too long, the paper trail would stack. They were gambling on my silence, on the timeline, on my trust. But they didn't know I'd already retained legal counsel, quietly, discreetly. The kind of attorney who drafts rebuttals with scalpel precision and doesn't blink under pressure. I compiled the documents, screenshotted the forged signatures, created an evidence log. Every digital footprint, every unauthorized access, every internal file she downloaded. That night she lit a candle in the dining room. "Can we take a weekend off soon?" she asked over dinner. "Just the two of us. You've been tense." I chewed slowly. "That sounds good." She smiled like she believed me, like she still thought she was ahead. After she went to bed, I opened the backup drive, labeled it Estate Archive, 2020, something she'd never open, never question. Inside were 2 folders, one for evidence, one for fallout. She was playing chess with the rulebook in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. But I'd stopped playing. I was documenting, and preparing for the only move I had left, endgame. I found the next document 2 days later. It wasn't filed through any public office. It was tucked in a shared folder she hadn't scrubbed yet, probably meant to move it later, or thought it looked too rough to use. But it was there. A second version of the share transfer, dated 6 weeks earlier than the last. Same forged signature. Different notary. Different phrasing. This one wasn't even subtle. It transferred 30% of the company directly into her name, citing undocumented marital contribution and equitable operational authority. Language no court would rubber stamp without deeper inquiry, but enough to plant seeds, enough to confuse the story if lawyers went digging after the damage was done. She was layering fictions, trying different versions, seeing what would stick, like she was beta testing betrayal. And the notary ID? Fake again. A defunct LLC that had been dissolved last year. She was reaching into the shadows now, trying to make ghosts look legal. But ghosts leave prints. Always. I printed the document, laid it side by side with my legitimate signature samples. The differences were unmistakable. Pressure inconsistencies. Slanted initials. It looked like a bad imitation from someone who knew just enough to be dangerous. This wasn't a one-time misstep. She had prepared this for months, before Carter ever touched her, before the first late-night drive. She looked at me across a dinner table while planning to erase me from my own company. I sat in the office that night and reread one of the texts from her thread with him. She'd sent it the night of her wellness retreat, right after he helped her draft that first document. "Once I'm in control, he can have the house. I'll take the rest." The house. Like a consolation prize. Like I was a burden she planned to leave behind in comfort, while she gutted everything else. That was the moment something changed in me. Not rage, something quieter, colder. The difference between being misled and being rewritten. She wasn't just shaping a future without me, she was reframing the past to excuse it. I forwarded everything to my attorney. Asked for one thing: don't warn them. Not yet. I wanted them to think the trap was working. I wanted their confidence, because they weren't building a future. They were walking into a wall. That weekend, we went to dinner with friends. She wore blue. Laughed like she always had. Slid her fingers through mine under the table. I smiled. Told stories. Paid the check. The waiter called us a beautiful couple. She kissed me in the car and said, "We're good, right?" I looked at her like I still believed her. "We're perfect." I didn't give her the confrontation she was expecting. No late-night yelling. No thrown accusations across the kitchen island. That would have made me look unstable, reactive. The very picture they needed for court filings, press leaks, or board rumors. Instead, I chose precision. I made one call. To someone I knew she still trusted. A mutual friend who hadn't yet picked a side. Someone who'd once called me. The only reason she started believing in structure. I gave her the documents, the fake notaries, the timeline. Told her calmly what was about to happen. Then I stepped back and let the message deliver itself. It was Saturday. Brunch. She was laughing with friends, Carter included, on the patio of some overpriced spot she used to call my little indulgence. I stayed home, knowing what was coming. Halfway through the meal, her phone lit up. It was a text from our friend. He knows everything. You might want to leave town. That's when she froze. Not visibly, not to anyone else, but I saw it later, watched the footage from the cafe's external cam. Her hand stilled on the stem of her glass. Her smile cracked, just barely. She looked at Carter, said something low. He leaned in. She shook her head. Her mouth tightened. An hour later, her inbox received another message. This time from my attorney. Subject line, reversion executed. Inside was the legal confirmation. The fraudulent transfers had been reversed. The notary fraud documented. The business authority reinstated and locked. All under seal. Timestamped. Registered. There was no room for rebuttal. No court would hear her case after this. No firm would risk proximity. By 5 p.m., Carter's name had been removed from the firm directory. By 6:30, she tried calling me. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded her a single document, a read-only PDF with every forgery, every timestamp, every trace of digital misstep, labeled simply, "For your records." No commentary. No threats. No response. She texted once more. "Can we talk?" I deleted it. Then I poured a drink and looked out across the yard we'd once landscaped together. The one she used to say was her sanctuary. She thought she could gut the business and keep the view. But the foundation was mine. She could have Carter. She could have her cousin's legal games. She could even have the friends who believed her story. What she couldn't have, what she never understood, was the one thing she needed most: the structure. And I had just made sure she'd never touch it again. She didn't come home that night. Not that it mattered. By the time her key hit the front door the next morning, it wouldn't have worked anyway. The locks had already been changed, quietly, legally, through a private security contractor. Not out of vengeance, out of necessity. She'd proven she could no longer be trusted inside my space, digital or physical. Instead, she tried the office. Receptionist buzzed me. "She's here. Says she needs a few minutes." I didn't come down. Just replied, "She no longer has credentials. If she refuses to leave, call legal." She left after 6 minutes. That was the last time she stood in my building. What unraveled after that didn't need my hand. Her emails had been sloppy. Mocking, sometimes. Boasting to her cousin about how easy it had been to pull files from my drives, how he was too proud to suspect anything. Screenshots, jokes at my expense, flirtations layered with strategy. It wasn't just deception. It was performance, for an audience that now had receipts. One anonymous leak was all it took. Within 48 hours, internal sponsors started pulling back. 2 of our biggest partnership leads froze negotiations. Pending clarification of executive structure, her board appointment, granted through my backing, was revoked. Official reason: concerns about document integrity. Unofficially, the partners didn't want her near a signing table again. Even Carter turned. He filed a formal statement through a third-party mediator claiming professional detachment and misunderstanding of personal boundaries. In other words, he tried to downplay it as a brief connection. That she used him. That he had no idea she was doing anything legally actionable. I didn't correct the record. I didn't need to. She was hemorrhaging credibility faster than I could have engineered. The irony? I didn't leak those emails. One of her own allies did, quietly, anonymously. Maybe out of guilt. Maybe to get ahead of the fallout. Maybe just to survive. By then, it didn't matter. She'd built her exit plan on a scaffolding of forged confidence and borrowed loyalty. And the moment one support gave out, the whole frame collapsed. She emailed me that night. 3 lines. "I never meant for it to go this far. Please talk to me." I didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to say. She hadn't just stepped out on me. She'd declared a silent war. And I'd ended it without raising my voice. This was never about passion. That truth hit harder than any betrayal. Because if it had been about emotion, about some impulsive need, some buried resentment, I could have chalked it up to human weakness. I might have even forgiven her, in time. But she used Carter like a tool. Her texts made that clear. He was leverage, not love. She dangled connection like bait, sent him praise, flattery, warmth in curated doses. Each message carefully composed to make him feel necessary, central, wanted. But never so intimate that it couldn't be denied. Never reckless. Just enough to keep him close. Appreciate you more than you know, she'd written, right after one of the document drafts came through. 3 days later, another message. Once I'm in control, he can have the house. I'll take the rest. It wasn't even phrased like a joke. It was operational language. Clean, detached. Like she was discussing logistics. I read that one twice. Once as a husband. Then again as a man pulling back the lens on the battlefield. She had turned closeness into a tool. Used charm and personal access as a channel to control. Not for affection. Not even for validation. For control. Carter, for all his posturing, was never a partner. He was an accomplice until he became a liability. When the filings blew up, when the fake notaries got traced, when internal investigators started sniffing around, she moved quickly. She stopped responding to him, blocked his number, purged messages, told mutual friends he'd misunderstood boundaries, and acted unprofessionally. I saw that one forwarded to me. It was almost poetic, watching her dismantle the very man she'd once built her strategy on. But I didn't feel vindicated, just tired, because in the end, what she'd betrayed wasn't just trust. It was the years we spent building something real. The nights planning the business over late dinners, the compromises, the sacrifices, the mutual wins. She hadn't just rewritten the story, she'd sold it to herself as her solo achievement. And in doing so, she proved something final. This wasn't about me. It was about what she thought she deserved, and what she was willing to destroy to get it. That clarity? That was the closest thing to peace I'd felt in weeks. She showed up 3 days later. No warning, no message. Just walked into the lobby like nothing had shattered, as if she still belonged there. She wore the same beige blazer she used to save for big meetings, hair tied up, clean lines, composed face. The receptionist looked at her unsure. "Can I help you?" She didn't smile. "Tell him I'm here." The words landed flat, but practiced, like she thought she still had authority. Like the wreckage hadn't already pushed her to the margins. The receptionist tapped her earpiece, then looked back at her without blinking. "He said you aren't." Her face didn't move for a moment, not a twitch. Then, "I need 5 minutes. He'll want to hear what I have to say." "He said you already said it." I was watching from the internal feed, but I didn't come down. I wanted that moment frozen, not out of cruelty, but finality. She needed to feel the consequence, undramatic, undeniable. She waited. 6 minutes. Checked her phone twice. Looked at the camera once. Straight into the lens, like she knew I was behind it. Then she turned and walked out. No tantrum. No plea. Just quiet. And in that silence, I felt something shift. Not closure, that's too neat. But weight displaced. A wall finally settling into place. Later that afternoon, I walked through the office she used to share with me. The one where we mapped out plans, celebrated first clients, debated tone for investor decks. I found one last thing in the drawer. A business card from the lawyer who'd filed her fake resolution, folded once down the middle, like she'd been deciding whether to keep it or not. I dropped it in the shredder, then walked back to my office. The door clicked shut behind me, and this time, I didn't open it for anyone. She tried to rebuild, briefly, publicly. A post on her professional profile appeared 3 days after her failed office visit. Something about navigating unexpected transitions with strength and clarity. The kind of language people use when they've lost everything but won't admit it yet. But the people who mattered had already seen the real story. The internal memo had circulated days earlier. Straightforward. Unemotional. Brutal in its clarity. Unauthorized transfer attempt resolved. Leadership intact. Legal review confirms document integrity breach limited to one former associate. No structural disruption anticipated. It didn't mention her name. It didn't need to. The silence was the judgment. Her name was quietly removed from our advisory board listings. Former partners stopped returning her calls. One of our affiliate networks pulled a collaborative webinar without explanation. The excuse? Internal restructuring. She filed a request to salvage her board seat at a secondary organization she joined last year. It was denied. Politely. Formally. But the language made it clear. We require leadership that reflects stability, transparency, and ethical continuity. She reached out to mutual contacts. They ghosted her. Even Carter, her strategist, filed his own formal detachment statement, citing her unauthorized use of legal resources and misrepresentation of role. That's how fast he folded. turned on her the moment his name entered a risk log. She wasn't just alone now. She was documented. I heard, through quiet channels, that she tried to pitch a new venture. Boutique consulting. Strategic development. She even recycled some of our old branding language, words we'd crafted together. No one bit. That name carried too much weight now. Not because of a scandal, but because of a memo. Because of silence. Because the people who'd watched it all unfold didn't need headlines or vengeance. They needed only one fact. She tried to steal something that wasn't hers, and she failed. Publicly. Permanently. The only person who still used her name in professional sentences was her. And even that sounded hollow now. I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no vindication playlist, no smug smile in the mirror. Just a pen, a notary, and a courier with clear instructions. The final move had to be quiet. After her attempts were fully disqualified, I transferred all remaining shares of the business into a private trust. One she couldn't trace, challenge, or influence. Held under a newly formed entity, sealed and managed by a fiduciary partner with no personal ties. It was clean. Boring, even. The kind of move that doesn't make headlines, but ends battles. The trust agreement voided all prior co-ownership filings, retroactively removed her stake, defined her role as advisory only, historical, non-equity, with no decision-making rights. Just a shadow in the records now. I couriered her a single envelope. Inside, a voided contract, the last one that ever carried her name next to mine. Official stamp, legal summary, time-stamped and filed. No note. No return address. No response required. By then, I'd already replaced the door locks at the house and the office. Not because I thought she'd come back, but because I needed the gesture. Tangible finality. Something I could turn in my hand. When I shut the door now, it clicked with certainty. That was enough. She tried once more, a week later. A voicemail this time. Her voice softer than I remembered. She said she'd made mistakes. Said she was confused. Asked if I could meet. Just for closure. Closure. The word hung like smoke. I deleted the message. Then I changed the voicemail greeting. Not out of spite. Out of design. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about protecting what I'd rebuilt, without noise, without her, without apology. And when I locked that last file into the archive, labeled and sealed, it felt like the final door shutting. No echo. No second thoughts. Just silence, and peace.